listening to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I gotta tell you something, people. I'm very excited to have my guest today because, well, first of all, he's a legendary drummer from Talking Heads and Tom Tom Club, a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But he has the most amazing memory because I'm listening to his book called Remain in Love, and I thought I had a good memory, and this gentleman remembers everything with the details. And I started listening to the book, and I'm working on it because I didn't know when I got into it. It's 15 hours. Now, if you break it down, that's 15 hours of entertainment. That's more than a season of Breaking Bad. That's a season and a half. But it's more than worth it. And my guest is Chris Frantz. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good. Thank you for that fabulous introduction.
Your memory. Well, first of all, I know you just turned 70. So I got to ask you, you've traveled the world. You're a member of you've been in two amazing bands. What does a guy who's 70 do for his birthday when he becomes 70? Because you've seen everything.
Well, it was a very happy occasion, but it was small. It was just immediate family, and we had champagne and lobster, and we didn't have to wear our masks because we were all vaccinated, and it was really very pleasant. And a couple of people dropped by and brought more champagne as the afternoon wore on. It was really good. And then afterwards, I took a super nap.
They're the best. I did that the other day.
That's one thing about the whole COVID thing, when you couldn't go out, couldn't go out. I really perfected the fine art of the afternoon nap.
It's a great art to have because there's nothing worse when it's funny when you take that afternoon nap, there's nothing worse than the one that you feel like you're in a deep sleep and then you wake up and it's only been 15 minutes and you go, wait, I only got 15 minutes of sleep. I wanted like 2 hours because I always feel if I get like a 2-hour nap, then my night, I can wake up earlier in the morning and it still goes towards my like 6 or 7 hours of sleep.
Yeah, but that's true. I hate waking up after only 15 minutes, but even then, it's that little disconnect really kind of gives you a recharge, I find.
Now, I want to ask you, I'm listening to the book. What's the difference between being in a recording studio, making music, which you have done your whole life, to recording a book? I mean, it must be a long process because it's, as I said, it's 15 hours. But do you nail it in one take, or I mean, what's the process? Because it's fascinating to me.
Well, I did it with an engineer. Actually, there were two engineers for the first half. It was a guy named Rick Kwan, who's a great professional engineer, and for the second half, after COVID broke out, it was Tina Weymouth who engineered. And I get feedback from them, but also via Skype, there was a very nice fellow from Macmillan Books. It's terrible. His name escapes me at the moment, but he was a British guy, or maybe Scottish. Anyway, he was the producer. And so I was expecting it to have a lot more sort of mistakes than I actually had. But, I don't have a lot of experience. I'm not a voice actor, so I hope I came across okay. It is a lot to listen to. I think I did it over 6 sessions,
Well, you know what it is? It's I always think when you listen to someone's life story, it's always better to hear their voice because you relate to it more. I mean, it's like, if I was reading your life story, I didn't experience it, so it's good. And I want to talk about your whole career because what's funny is usually when someone has a book, you sit there and, you don't want to have certain excerpts, but you have so much meat in that book that I want to give the people an outline just because so they will go and get the book because, I mean, you remember your aunts, your uncles, friends of yours. Have you always had this just insane memory or did you have to sit there and actually go back and go, okay, let's see. When I was 6, I was here, or did that all just come back to you?
Yeah. Well, I did not keep journals at any point during my life. So I wish I had, but I didn't. But I don't know. I'm just blessed with a good memory, I guess. My father had that also, that type of recall. And he also had an extraordinary sense of direction. And I have a pretty good sense of direction too. But I think also our arts training at the Rhode Island School of Design really taught you to observe, and I mean really observe something that you're drawing or painting or sculpting or whatever, making a film of. You have to look very deeply, and when you do look deeply into an object or a creature, then you tend to remember that. You're not just whizzing by. You're really checking it out.
Now, so what made you fall in love with the drums, and why do you think you've kept this romance for all these years? Because when you think about it, musicians play for a long time. Now, someone who's an accountant may work for 30 years, and they don't just sit there at 6. They don't go, I want to be an accountant. I mean, some might. But then they'll retire after 30 years. You have had a lifelong love with the drums.
Yeah.
What happened? Why have you had this love affair?
Well, I write about it in my book. When I was in about the 4th or 5th grade, I was in elementary school, public elementary school, and we were very fortunate back then to have music instruction and band. In the warm months, it was band. In the winter, cold months, it was orchestra. And so I played in both, and I started on the trumpet. That was really what I thought. Oh, those trumpet players look cool, you know. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and it wasn't happening for me. What's the right word? Is it embouchure?
I think so.
The way you form your mouth to play the trumpet, I just wasn't getting it. So I had a very wise and kind band instructor. His name was Tina Weymouth, and he was actually a mallet instrument guy, you know, xylophone and marimba and vibraphone, and he also played piano, and he also played drums. And he said, well, you know, Chris, I can see you're trying, and I can see what do you say we switch you over to drums? You seem to have a good sense of rhythm. Let's switch you over to drums and see what happens. And he did, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And when he said switching me over to drums, that was not like a drum kit and where that was a wooden block with a rubber pad attached to it and a pair of sticks. And you started practicing your rudiments, you know, and gradually you get better and better, and you're able to do more complicated things. But anyway, that was how I got started. And right about that same time that I was switching to drums, the Beatles came out. The Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan and, changed a whole lot of lives, I believe. And mine was one of them. And I just like, look at them. Look how much fun they're having. Look how the girls adore them. You know, look how much fun that guy Ringo's having up there. And I thought, well, clearly this is what I want to do. So it was like a dream from age 12, I think it was, when the Beatles came out to right up to, it was a dream I had. And my book is about how hard we all had to work to make that dream come true.
It's funny, and I said the book. It just there's so much detail, and that it's amazing because a lot of times when you read books, you listen to a book, it's like 4 hours. As I said, yours is very long. I want you to go through some of the main points because, as I said, with your book, there's so much detail. You can tell main point. It doesn't take away from the story because you're missing out. It'd be like watching a movie in 30 minutes when yours is forever. How did the Talking Heads begin?
Well, Talking Heads began when David Byrne and I had a band at Rhode Island School of Design called the Artistics. And it was sort of a prototypical punk band, I think you could say. But we played mostly cover songs. And most of those songs were like, garage rock songs, and also a little Velvet Underground and a little, Can't Explain by The Who, and we liked the Trogs, and we played, garage rock, and we were doing all these covers, and we were having a good time. The band was called the Artistics, and we performed. The sole reason for the band was to perform at parties for our friends and school dances, of which we did a couple. And we didn't have any ambitions beyond that. But then one day, I think David and I were talking, and we thought, well, maybe we should try to write a song. And David went home, and Tina was my girlfriend at the time, and also she was also studying painting, and she and I shared a studio at the school, and painting studio. And one day there was a knock on the door. Tina and I were working. There's a knock on the door, and it was David with his acoustic guitar. And he says, "I've got the beginnings of a song, but I'd like you to, work with me on it." And he had this idea that the bridge of the middle section of the song should be in a foreign language to signify some kind of psychotic break. The name of the song was Psycho Killer. And David said he had modeled it loosely on the whole Alice Cooper phenomenon that was happening at the time. Alice Cooper was like the number one touring artist and recording artist in the country at the time. So it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, the way Alice Cooper would be. Anyway, by the time the song was performed, we realized people really liked this. And I thought, we thought it was good, but you never know if people are going to like it or not. And they really did, like immediately. And so we thought, It made me think that I should continue to work with David and move to New York City upon graduation from RISD and start a band. And David was up for moving to New York, and when I asked him if he wanted to start a band, he said, "I guess so." And so that's how it happened. And Tina was not in the band to begin with, but she was not a member of the Artistics, but she was very supportive of. She loved it, And I could tell by dancing with Tina that she had a very finely tuned sense of rhythm, and I knew from speaking with her and being with her that she shared a similar aesthetic to David and I. Appreciated the same types of music, were interested in the avant-garde, things like that. So eventually we all three moved to New York, and I got a loft. I invited Tina to live with me, and then I invited David to live with me. The three of us lived in that loft on 195 Christie Street, just below Houston. And David and I started playing, and we thought, oh, we'll meet musicians in New York, and we did meet musicians, but they all already had a band, or they didn't seem particularly keen on working with David and I. So eventually, I kept asking Tina if she would like join us, and she kept saying, no, that's a guy thing. It's a boys' club, and it would just mean a lot of trouble. But one day, she came walking into the loft with a bass guitar, a Fender Precision, I think a 1962. Anyway, it's a vintage, great bass guitar, and she had been buying it on layaway, like $5 a week. And it had just been her birthday at the end of November, and her parents gave her $100, and so she was able to go get the bass, and then we were a trio, for a long time. But am I wandering?
No, I love this. Because I love the scene. I've recently interviewed Clem Burke, and and I've interviewed a few people. I've interviewed in the past Richard Lloyd, who were all involved in that early New York scene, and I love hearing it from you guys because it's music that me and my friends all listened to, but it came from somewhere, and that's what fascinates me. Like for you, when you were a trio, now when did you become a foursome?
We became a foursome just before we made our first record album, and we became a foursome after we signed a recording contract, because we were scouting Jerry Harrison, who had played keyboards and guitar, and had been with the Modern Lovers, the original version of that band. And we really liked that Modern Lovers album. And a friend of my mother's said to me, Chris, I have a nephew who goes to Harvard, and he's in a band. And I said, oh, really? And she said, yes, his name is Ernie Brooks. And she gave me Ernie's number, and Ernie was the bass player of the Modern Lovers. So one day I bumped into Ernie in New York City. I recognized him. He had a big head of curly hair, and what was that place called? The Local. It was called the Local in the West Village, and we were having dinner there. I recognized Ernie Brooks. I went over and introduced myself, and I said, do you know how we could get in touch with Jerry Harris for me? So I called Jerry, and we got together. We actually did a gig in Cambridge just so Jerry could see the band play. It's the first time a band has auditioned for a keyboard player. But, or maybe not, but I think it might be. And he really liked it, but he didn't want to join the band until because of his experience with the Modern Lovers, which was, the band broke up just before they made a record deal. And he wanted to make sure we had a record deal before he joined the band, and that it was all signed. And so we did that eventually. We made our record deal with Sire Records in New York, and the same label the Ramones were on. And Jerry joined the band, and he was an excellent addition. One of the smartest things we ever did was bring Jerry in, because Jerry, he didn't change the way we sounded or anything like that. He just amplified it and made it more cohesive, So it was a great idea to bring Jerry in. Great idea to bring Tina in.
how hard was it for you guys to get that record deal? Because, you hear all different stories. Like some people, they jump through hoops. They jump through, was it easy for you? Because it was a beginning of a new sound.
Yeah, well, we actually turned down record deals, which is, it sounds so crazy now. But at the time, we just knew we weren't ready to make an album. We had seen bands that made an album maybe a little bit too soon, and they never got a chance to make another record after the first one was a flop. So, famously, we were offered a record deal by Seymour Stein of Sire Records, and we just said, Seymour, we really like you, but we're not ready yet. And this really drove him crazy because he was imagining that some other record company was going to snatch us out from under him, and that never happened. But and it's a good thing because Sire Records was great for us, a small record company located in New York City and not in some skyscraper in Los Angeles or whatever. So yeah, we really took our time making it. We made Seymour wait for 18 months until we said, okay, we're ready now. And
how did you know you weren't ready? And that's such, because that's such a big thing, because people who are musicians, they can't wait for that record contract. And in hindsight, you made a very mature decision because you knew if it screwed up, you wouldn't play again. But how do you sit there as a young musician and say, "No, we're not ready"? When you have this carrot dangling in front of you, how did you guys know you weren't ready for it?
Well, we did make some demos, and we made one for Columbia. CBS Records, in the big CBS studios. An A&R man named Mark Spector took us into the CBS studios in Manhattan, the famous big ones, where they recorded West Side Story and Frank Sinatra and stuff like that. And we set up, this is a trio, we set up, and he said, just run through your set, and we'll record you live. And we did that. And, listening back to it, it's really fun to hear and everything, but it doesn't sound like a band that's you want to listen to repeatedly. We knew that there's a difference between live and recording. Like live, you can be exciting and you can make mistakes and people forgive you because you're immediately on to the next part of the song. But when you're recording a record, that you want that to be something that will stand up to repeated listenings. And we just realized by making these demos in our early years that we weren't really to the level we wanted to be yet. We were close, but we had to get a little bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say commercial, because we were never really too concerned with commerciality, but we wanted to have a little more finesse.
So you get to that point. Now, what were your live gigs like back then? I mean, what was the scene like? That's it's such a different time when you think about it. Now it's, there's all these clubs and scenes, but you guys are going to the new places. What was that like for you guys? Was it exciting, or was it a little scary because you're covering ground that no one's really been in?
I never felt like it was scary, but I did feel excited. It was an exciting time, and very romantic, in the true sense of the word. And not every night was fantastic, and not every not every performance was what you wanted it to be. Not every audience was what you had hoped they would be. But some nights were pure magic, and that's what keeps you going. And as we went on, we had more and more of those, more and more of the pure magic, and it was great.
Now, well, first of all, when's the first time you heard a Talking Head song on the radio? Do you remember? Because I'm sure you probably remember because you remember everything.
Well, yeah. I would remember that, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
It was somewhere up in upstate New York. We were going to a college radio station to do an interview because we had a gig in town that night. I think it may have been Binghamton, New York. Probably was Binghamton. Anyway, we go up this hill, and I thought, well, we'll turn on, and we're driving my family station wagon that I inherited from my mom and dad. We could fit the whole band and our gear in one station wagon in those early days. And incredible. But then I decided to tune into the station we were headed to see if they were talking about the interview we were going to do. And we heard them playing Psycho Killer. And that was the first time, and everybody was like, whoa. And I still get excited every time I hear us on the radio. And thank God I still do hear us on the radio.
Yeah. Now, as you're going along, when did you guys start feeling that you were making strides and getting more popular? Was there a certain point where you said, okay, you know what? People are buying us? Because I think any kind of artist always worries. Like, you feel that you've done a good job, but you feel unappreciated at times. And I think anyone in life does that. I do it all the time. I mean, I sit there and I go, wait a second, I don't feel appreciated. But for you, when did you guys feel like you started getting appreciated by your listeners and getting a good fan base?
Well, we were very fortunate to be offered this tour of. I write about this in my book. Sorry, my phone. Let me just. I'm back. We were very fortunate to be offered just about the time we were putting the finishing touches on our first album. We were offered a springtime tour of the capitals of Europe, is how they built it, opening for the Ramones, supporting the Ramones, and we jumped at the opportunity. It was my first time ever to Europe. It was also Jerry's first time ever to Europe. David was from Scotland, so he had been to Scotland, but I don't think he'd ever been to the continent. And Tina had a lot of, her mother was French, so she'd been to France and Italy, but I don't think she'd been much in the rest of Europe. Anyway, it was a very exciting thing, and we started off in Zurich, Switzerland. And it was every night was sold out. Every night was like pandemonium and really exciting. And it was great to know that the Ramones audience could appreciate Talking Heads and vice versa. And it made a great double bill. And we did this for about 6 weeks. And all over, well, we played at the Roundhouse in London with the Ramones, of course, and everybody was in the audience: the Clash, the Sex Pistols, the Jam, the Slits, the Damned. It was like the heyday of punk. We weren't really punk, but we shared a lot of the same audience with these bands, and it was just a great time. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm going to turn it off altogether.
It's probably one of those people trying to sell you a warranty.
Yeah, probably. So, ask me another question.
Okay.
Kind of got distracted there.
Okay, no, well, we were talking about you were in the roundhouse with and everyone was in the audience.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, we were suddenly getting a lot of attention in the music press and on the radio in the UK and also Holland and a little bit in France. Quite a good deal of airplay in Belgium, and we had this popularity building, and you know, very sort of underground, bubbling under kind of popularity, but it was building, and but we got a reputation in the United States then for being famous in Europe, and that really helped us. Like before that tour, we couldn't even get a gig in New Jersey, really, because or Long Island, except for my father's place. But you know, there were a lot of places we had no there was no demand for us until we did that tour of Europe. So that was a real breakthrough.
Now, what's it like as you start getting bigger and you start headlining and people and the one thing about your band is also you've always been very critically acclaimed because you've had a great sound, a different sound. What is that like as a musician? Do you sit there and feel that, you know, you've made it, or do you not want to rest on your laurels as you're getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah, we tried not to appear to be resting on our laurels. You know, it was pretty gradual for us. We never had enormous commercial success. I mean, we never got to Madonna or Michael Jackson levels of success, or even the Police. The Police sold a hell of a lot more records than we ever did. But you're right. We had a good artistic credibility, and I think it's pretty unusual we were having enough commercial success that we were very comfortable, and the record company was making money, and everything was going well, you know. But we never had that overwhelming kind of success like Elvis or something. It wasn't like that, but it was very gratifying to me. I realized that it might have been a lot of pressure for David, but I don't know. He seems to be carrying on with the same type of thing. So
now, what do you think the role of MTV played in your career? Because, you know, MTV was music, and we all watched it, and your videos were great videos, and MTV could make or break, and then all of a sudden you would get recognized more because everybody watched MTV. How do you think it affected your career?
Well, it gave us a big boost. The first video, Once in a Lifetime, was something that David made unbeknownst to the rest of the band with his girlfriend at the time. Oh, what's her name? The choreographer and actress who did Mickey and
Tony Basil.
Yeah, Tony Basil. Thank you. Tony was really the director on that video. So, but we saw it and we said, "Oh, this is undeniably good." So it was released to MTV, and in the very early days of MTV, and then after that, it was just a succession of making more and more videos to be shown on, you know, video channels. And I remember our manager saying, "Oh, this is going to be terrible because everybody's going to have to like wear makeup and get their hair done and you know, look their best." And he didn't like that aspect of it. But we, having been to art school and enjoying like visual things, we thought, well, we can use this to as an art form without trying to sound too pretentious, but we treat it as an art form instead of just a commercial for a band. So that's what we did, and I think we did a pretty good job of it.
Oh, you did, and it's funny, and it is true. If you look at it as an artistic venture instead of a something else, it actually comes from your heart, and I think people see that. And your videos were different, and that's what's good. And because everything after a while back then, videos started getting the same. It's like a Hallmark movie; they're all the same. But you guys came in with something different. Now, you and Tina. Which, first of all, what's it like working with your wife for all these years? Because, people who have small businesses, they work. Now, you guys are working together. What is that like? What has that been like?
Well, it's been great. It's not always easy for Tina or for me, but we've managed to navigate all those difficult moments. And I mean, there haven't been that many. Anyway, I love working with Tina. I write in the book that I've really never known it any other way. I've been working with her since 1975. So, no, 1974. So it's been a long time. And I think we're still a darn good combination.
Well, you are, and Tom Tom Club was great. And now, what was that like when you guys decided to form that? Because was there any? David was going to do a solo career. Were you guys fine with that, and you just wanted to create your own project and go a different route with your music? I mean, what is it like when you're starting to form a band when you've been involved in a band?
Yeah. Well, it was never our intention to do a Talking Heads, anything outside of Talking Heads. Our hand was kind of forced because David announced that he was doing a solo project, and then Jerry said, well, if David's going to do it, I'm going to do a solo project. And Tina and I, our accountants said to us, you better do something. So we were very fortunate in that Chris Blackwell invited us to come down to Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas, where we had recorded more songs about buildings and food and Remain in Light. So we had spent a good deal of time there. Talking Heads was the first band to record at that studio. And he said, come on down, make a single. If I like the single, then you can do a whole album. And we said, great. And we went down, we cut a song called Wordy Rapping Hood. And Wordy Rapping Hood was like a prototypical hip-hop, rap, dance, polyrhythmic thing. And we were signed to Island Records for the UK, Europe, and Latin America, and it was a hit in all of those areas, all those regions. And in fact, I just did an interview with Belgium where it was a #1 hit for something like 10 weeks. So anyway, it was crazy. So then he said, go ahead, make a whole album now. So we did. And it was like one of those pure magic times when everything just seemed to work out so well. We worked really hard on it. We really did. But the work was so good.
Where were you pulling from to get the sound and the writing? Where was it coming from?
Well, at the time we were listening to like dance club music. Like we imagined that we should make a record that would sound good at the Mud Club or Danceteria or the Paradise Garage. And thank goodness we succeeded at that. But that we were listening to dance music, reggae music, dub reggae music. We were starting to listen to bands like King Sunny Ade were being signed, African bands. It was we listened to all kinds of stuff. I mean, we also were very fond of AC/DC. So, you know, it was our musical tastes were all across the board there.
Now, you also did an album, The Heads, with Jerry Harrison. How did that come about? And it's the best title of an album, No Talking, Just Head. Such a great title. Now people will be like, what do you mean? That's so offensive. And he'd be like, no, it's this.
I know. It was meant to be kind of a shocker of a title, which it was. But yeah, we did that because we wanted to make another Talking Heads album, but David continued to refuse to work with the rest of us. So we did a record with a different lead singer, well-known singers on each song. Some of them more well-known than others, but I mean, for example, we had Michael Hutchence and Debbie Harry and Andy Partridge from XTC and Maria McKee and Richard Hell. And, you know, it was a really interesting, Johnette Napolitano. It was a really interesting bunch of singers, and they collaborated with us on each song. And then we did a tour, but unfortunately, critics and music press in general was not. Let's just say their attitude was, "How dare they make an album without David Byrne?"
Now, why did he refuse? You said he refused to make an album with you guys, and was that hurtful for you?
It was. He didn't just refuse; he threatened to sue us. So you could say it was hurtful, but you know, that's water under the bridge. What the hell? That was 1996. Now,
what made you decide to write a book? Everyone, you've had this great career, and what sits there? Because when you write a book, and especially for your book, because you're opening up your whole life. Okay, as I said, you're very descriptive and details very impeccable. That opens you up to a lot of, if someone was to say they didn't like the book, you would be like, well, this is my life. So what made you decide to write it? And were you worried about how some people if people reacted, how you would feel?
I had some qualms about, the last thing I wanted my book was to sound like a memoir written by a grumpy old man. That was not what I was hoping to convey to my readership. No, I feel very fortunate, and the reason I wanted to write the book was Talking Heads was such a good band, and we did such wonderful work together that I would like people who listen to our music to understand how it was really a shared experience between the various members of the band and the sidemen who came in later, and how the whole thing worked. And the way the history has been written, or continues to be written, is that it was kind of a one-man show. But it was not a one-man show. David Byrne is very, very important to the success and the wonderful artistic enterprise that was Talking Heads. But Tina's also very important, and so is Jerry, and so am I. So I wanted people to know I'm not complaining about my lot in life. I'm very happy to be the drummer in these various bands, you know. But I just wanted to, you know, people to know that it was a more shared experience.
I think we know. I mean, the thing that the fans know that, and it's like anything, you know, when a basketball team, when one guy's like the highest scorer, they forget that it's everybody that takes you to the championship and the top. And now, talking about championships, they just announced the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the people entering. Tell me your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame experience, because I talked to Phil Manzanera the other day, and he told me about when Brian Ferry texted all them that Roxy Music made it. But tell me about your rock and roll experience, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame experience, and does it mean a lot to you?
Well, you know, yeah, I guess it means a lot. I got my little statue over there on the other side of the room, but with the Grammy and the Moon Men, you know. Well, it was really fun to get back together with David and Jerry and Tina and to play. It's too bad we only got one night to do it and 3 songs. but it was a good experience for me. And you know, people have a lot of opinions about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I have my opinions too. But I can tell you that as a musician, when you get the call that you're about to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it gave me a very good feeling, because it was not something I ever anticipated. But there it was. And it happened on the same night that the Ramones were inducted, the same night, and Tom Petty and Isaac Hayes. It was a great night. Gene Pitney, you know.
Now, tell me a story that didn't make the book. Tell me something that you wanted to make the book and it didn't. Was there anything that the editors didn't let you put in? Because I want to hear that, because I want to hear something that's not in the book.
But you know, you're going to have to wait for the next book, the sequel. But yeah, there were a few things that the attorney said, no, you can't say that. A lot of it was because of the, you know, the sort of what the right wing likes to call being overly politically correct. But you have to, you know, when you're writing a book, you have to listen to what the libel lawyers tell you. And I did. And a few things were not, but, you know, like I said, this was not that type of book. It was not a libelous book. Not by a long stretch of the imagination.
Now, when you finally sat down, the book was finished. Were you happy with the final product, or did you sit there after and go, "Oh, I should have done that. Oh, damn!" I mean, what happened?
Well, it's my first book, so I don't want to beat myself up. I'm sure there are a few things that could have been different or somehow more eloquent, but you know, before I wrote the book, I sat down with Ian Hunter, you know, from Mott the Hoople, and he lives in Connecticut also, and we had a mutual friend. We met for lunch, and he wrote a book that I really enjoyed called Diary of a Rock and Roll Star, and so when I sat down to lunch with Ian Hunter, I said, Ian, I really enjoyed your book. I'm thinking of writing my own memoir. Do you have any advice for me? And he said, well, mate, all I can tell you is to write in your own voice and don't make shit up. So that's what I did.
Now, looking back on your fascinating career, what are 2 of your favorite moments that have happened to you in your life?
Okay. One of my favorite moments is when I was it was autumn, September in 1971, and I was sitting in this little park at the Rhode Island School of Design, next to a busy intersection where all the students would go back and forth. And I was sitting on the grass with a friend, and it was the beginning of the school year, and I looked to my left, and there was a girl coming down the street, Benefit Street, on an old, 3-speed bicycle, painted yellow. And she looked really great. And as she went by, I thought, oh my God, that girl is fabulous. And I turned to my friend, who was one of the models at the school, artist models, Charlie the model, they call him. I said, Charlie, did you see her? And he said, oh, yes, that's my friend Martina. I said, oh, Martina. And that was the first time I ever laid eyes on Tina Weymouth. So, and I remember it. It's like a Truffaut movie, in my mind. And so there's that. And then I would say another time was when Genius of Love, the Tom Tom Club song Genius of Love, hit in America. I was walking down Houston Street, walking west on Houston Street. And when you hit 6th Avenue, there's at 6th Avenue in Houston, there's a huge basketball court, like a park of basketball courts. And everybody was a lot of young guys playing basketball with their boom boxes all tuned to WBLS. And just as I was coming around the corner of the basketball court there, Genius of Love came on. And now there were like 8 basketball courts in this park, and they were all dancing to Genius of Love. And I thought, well, you know what? It doesn't get any better than this, really, as an artist, And that was a pretty high moment for me. Oh, there were so many, but I'm going to say arriving in Japan for the first time and thinking, wow, everybody's Japanese. And they treated us so well there. I mean, we were just we had like 2 records out there at the time, and they just really, the record companies and the promoter, a young guy, really rolled out the red carpet. And we met our friends, the Plastics, who were a design group that became a band. And it was just a wonderful time. I love that moment.
Well, that's awesome. Now, what have you been doing during this whole pandemic?
Well, I've been sitting tight, but now I'm doubly vaccinated. No, there've been 4 of us in this house, a little pod of 4 humans, 3 dogs. And we just really kept to ourselves. I even hired a professional shopper to go to the grocery store for us and stuff, because I didn't want to take any chances. But now we're doubly vaccinated, all of us, and we can begin to party again.
It is a great feeling. My wife and me have been very careful, and after we were both doubly vaccinated, I got to get my vaccination early because I have an irregular heartbeat, so I've had problems with that. So they said, get that done. But I'll tell you, man, the first day she was double vaccinated, we went to all-you-can-eat sushi, and it was like a party because it was like, and everybody was just in a great mood. So it's good. So I have one final question. What's a question that you want people to ask you that they never ask you?
Oh. who's going to play Chris Frantz in the biopic?
Now, who would you like to see you play you?
Well, Brad Pitt's too old now. I don't know, man. I mean, there's so many good young actors. That's one of the, thank God for Netflix and YouTube and all the streaming services. But I'm discovering new actors all the time that I had never heard of. So who knows?
Okay, well, I want to thank you for coming on. Now, you're on Twitter. You seem to tweet a lot.
I tweet now and then. I've been picking up since I had this book out because it seems like people who read like to tweet.
Yes. And now the website is TomTom Club, and there's information about the book there. And you can get the book on Amazon, and you can get it hardback, softback, Audible, Kindle. Listen, I sit there with my Alexa, and I say, play the book. And it plays it. And I can sit there instead of reading it. I can just sit there and lay down and have a glass of iced tea and listen to the book. So people, get the book. It's really good. It's give yourself, if you're going on vacation, perfect vacation listen. You're by the pool, relaxing. It's 15 hours. And it's called Remain in Love. And Chris, I want to thank you so much for coming on. People, go to the website, TomTom Club. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 850 episodes on there. Email me, cooper@coopertalk.net. At Twitter, it's @CooperTalk. So remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.